Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Deciphering My Experience. My name is Eric, and I am joined today with Richard and Linda from the Global Enlightenment Radio Network as well. They have a show called The Return of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which I highly recommend everybody goes and checks out. More importantly, they're working on a project that I'm looking to help support them with as of recently, is a new venture called Fringe TV, which I think is going to be fantastic for folks out there in this new digital medium of presenting the truth. And in our conversations, I've learned that Richard and Linda are also former Long Islanders. So,
yes.
Yeah, right. In the grand scheme of conversations about fringe topics and deciphering my experience and enlightening people globally, I think it's very helpful that we have such common vernacular and history. It brings a lot of fun to the conversations that we've had so far, and I think we'll see that today. So welcome, Linda. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Excellent. So I guess first and foremost, let's let everybody know about your new venture with the Fringe TV. What's that all about?
Well, we kind of put the radio show on hold. We don't have any more shows. We finished it in December for now, which just kind of in limbo to concentrate more on Fringe TV, which is available through Roku, which is a device. You're better off explaining that one because technical things I'm not.
Yeah. We decided to go forward with creating our own television channel, a streaming channel, because that's the general trend. I know a lot of you out there might still be as we enter 2021. I know there's some people who are still asking, what's a Roku? Which I'm shocked because I've been using it for about 6 or 7 years now myself. And so Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire Stick, okay, Google Chrome, all right, the Chromecast. Those are all examples of streaming. And that is the major growing trend, whereas cable and satellite has taken a nosedive in a big way over the years. And you can look at the stats on that. Many years ago, I dumped my cable package and just strictly devoted myself to Roku. And as time has grown, everything you originally might have thought you were going to miss out on, you can get it all on streaming TV, including up-to-date news broadcasts, live sports broadcasts, everything.
They call it cutting the cord, is what they call it.
I buy that 100%.
Yeah.
I had to teach myself a new term because all these years I've been using the Roku device. I didn't realize there was a new term coming about called OTT, or over the top. And I knew what over the top meant, reaching critical mass, but they ended up adopting the term into the streaming television genre to represent the streaming industry, which has gone over the top of the iron-handed control that network television and cable television has, which is truly pissing them off, to put it a certain way, because they have no way of controlling streaming TV and streaming entertainment of any kind.
It sounds to me like you've identified some gatekeepers and you're going to do your best to be a gate crasher, Richard.
Yes.
I like the sounds of that.
Currently, there are 49 million households that have a Roku device.
Yeah.
So that's a nice audience to introduce Fringe TV to. We just need to get the word out there that it is a live channel and people need to download it onto their Roku device.
Well, I'm gonna be grabbing the Roku device myself because
they're not expensive at all.
Penny's on there, and I like cutting the cord. I like crashing the gate, and I like the direction that you guys are going. So I'm gonna vote with my dollar. I'm gonna buy a Roku.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're really not expensive. It's just like a little jump drive that you plug into the back of your smart TV. That's it.
I love it. it makes sense. And with the way that the world is moving, these things have to become more mainstream and less fringe.
Yeah.
So apparently there's 49 million people that think that this fringe device of a Roku is great. And I think that brings us right back into your topic of fringe TV. So besides the wonder of the device of a Roku, let's get into the channel itself. So fringe TV. And the ideas and the concepts. What can you say about that?
We are, as you'll see on our description on our channel, it's easy to download it from the Roku channel store, and it says right on there, all fringe content all the time. Forget about your mainstream theories, okay?
There you go. There you go.
So we have a lot of excellent disclosure topics on there, thought-provoking TV, thought-provoking short films, groundbreaking stuff. We have 4 right now, and hopefully we will have you as number 5 on there, but
I'm really looking forward to
it. So we have our 4 foundational hosts on there. One is Seraph GL. He's got That Which Matters Most. You guys got to check that out. We have Piercing the Veil of Illusion by Michelle Gibson. She has about 27 episodes on there. Many of them are comprised of 3, 4, and 5-part miniseries that she puts together as a package. We have Nachtwaffen by Penny Bradley, dealing with the secret space program, mind control topics, all that stuff. And we also have Synchronicities with Kelly Rainbow Butterfly, dealing a lot with all things Sasquatch, but not just that. Okay. And so we have excellent documentaries, original documentaries, which have gone as far as being listed on IMDb by Hale Mednick from Oracle Productions. Okay. He's got first-rate, phenomenal interviews and discussions on there that you guys are going to want to watch. And it just goes from there. That's just the tip of the iceberg.
That's great. I think people should also know that it's you guys yourselves are producing this channel.
Yes.
And are also experiencers yourselves.
Yes.
So I find that to be very important, that you're not just simply taking an idea and putting it to market. You're taking your experience and basically laying it out there and giving an avenue for people that are exactly like yourselves to get their stories out there. And that's the part to me that's really enticing, is that to me, this has a very comfortable Long Island feel to it.
Yes.
It's almost like we're gathering.
That's our TV logo, and the little bottom part says, I don't know if you can read it.
Superpower Crypto Meta.
Nice. I love it. That's great.
But yes, going back to what you just said, Richard and I are both lifetime experiencers. That's
our inspiration for doing the channel. Yeah.
We both have written books about our experiences. And it's not just us, it's our family. It's multi-generational. So I don't know how many other couples are out there that have our story, but we've come to realize in the 25 years that we've known each other, we've known each other since we were children on a ship.
Yes.
So I was 11 and he was 4 when we first were paired together. It's crazy when you start really looking into it. Even myself, sometimes I still have a hard time swallowing the whole thing, because it's like a sci-fi movie.
It is. And it's so crazy when you start to look at Long Island, stem to stern, North Shore to South Shore, everywhere. It's a fury of oddities and fringe things going on, and
nobody wants to talk about it.
Right.
Oh my goodness. It's everywhere you turn, and everyone will sit there saying, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. You're out of your mind. That stuff's not going on. But then they'll go, but my uncle, he did work over at Plant 7. And he was there for, and you hear those stories all day long.
My dad worked at Shoreham.
Yeah. Oh, okay. See, there you go. Mine did too.
My dad was an electrical engineer there.
Yeah.
There you go. Was he direct hire for Lilco or a different company?
I believe he was.
Oh my God, Lilko.
I think he was hired through
Lilko.
Yes, I think he was hired. You know what?
I would assume Lilko. Unless you know otherwise, I would assume it was Lilko.
Probably, because Lilko does sound familiar to me with that whole showroom job experience.
I haven't heard the term Lilko
because we had just moved from Uniondale to Freeport, and that's when he got the job as an electrical engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it was through Lilko. Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Which is Long Island Lighting Company, for those who don't know what Lilko is.
Yeah.
Long Island Lighting Company, which was the privately owned power supply company that was building a nuclear power plant.
Mm-hmm.
That it got very shady. It got really weird over there on Long Island with the
There's nothing shady about Long Island. What are you talking about?
They didn't want to open the power plant at the last second, right before they were going to throw the switch on, and then they decided to shut it down for the people because they're not going to have a nuclear power plant on Long Island because the people don't want one.
Right.
So then they made everyone pay for it anyway, since it was already constructed, and everybody got it in their Lilko bill. And Long Island is where, for all practical purposes, paying the highest electricity ever manufactured in the world at that rate. So then Lilko magnanimously said, we're going to get rid of the plant so that you don't have to pay for the fact that it's now existing and not generating electricity, you know, because it's a nuclear power plant that's not making electricity. It still has overhead. So you won't have to pay the overhead anymore. We have that taken care of. So you guys don't want a power plant. You don't get a power plant. You don't want the burden of a power plant. We will absolve you of that. So they moved it across the street to Brookhaven National Labs and fired it right up.
And didn't we pay for the moving of it too?
Probably, yeah. I think that was part of the last burden that you'll have to absorb.
You don't want it? Okay, we'll make you pay for the move right across the street.
Yeah, which was a wonderful decades-long way of the CIA saying, how do we get the nuclear power plant that we want at our facility without having to pay for it?
Right.
That's all that was.
So these are 2 out of 3 of a series of Richard's books.
Nice.
This one is part 1.
The Moor, the Mason, and the Alien. I like that it says a call to action.
Yes.
I love
this
that.
This one is part 2 of Real Manifesto.
Oh, excellent.
And he's working on part... Huh?
Was that like a phoenix in the atmosphere?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
That's Mars, right? Yeah, this is Mars. That's Earth, obviously. Or is this Mars before it turned orange?
Well, that's Earth, but on the second cover, a lot of people would think this is Earth, but that's a terraform version of Mars, and this is traditional Mars.
Very cool. Well, definitely check that out, folks. If you guys want to find out more about Richard and Linda's past, check out the book series and get more informed.
Yeah, the way he does his books is the first half is our story. The second half is all the need to know information regarding what's been going on with these extraterrestrial beings for eons, etc.
I think it's great as an SSP couple in the conversation.
Yes. This is my book. It's all of my experiences, my mom's, my sister, my kids, my father, everybody. There's pictures in here. There's documentation of every sighting that my mother saw from 1995 until she passed away.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's quite detailed too.
Could you rattle off of the top of your head where and when the first person in your family has stated to there being a sighting?
Well,
you want to go first on that?
My very first memory of seeing something that was not normal was, and I know it sounds crazy because people are like, well, that was very young. How can you remember that? Because I do. I know it is. I know it's true because I can't explain it any other way. I was about 3.5, almost 4. My sister wasn't born yet. It was 1967. And every night I would have a dream of me falling into bed, and I'd wake up in a panic and I'd go into my parents' bedroom, which was right next door. this one particular night, I got into the hallway and I was looking down and I see 4 bluish glowing feet. And I look up and I see these 2 beings standing there, and they look at me and telepathically tell me to go to bed, and I did. In 1995, late 94, my mother started going to this book club. My mother was not a very social person. She didn't go out much, but my sister and I were grown, and she started going out and going to this book club, and she met a group of people. And when I started seeing what she was reading, my sister and I looked at each other and said, well, we have to tell her now. So we finally told her what was going on in the 70s with her and I. The reason why my book is called The Kings Are Coming is because that's what my sister said to me on numerous occasions when we were younger. She would say, oh my God, the kings are coming. We'd run into our bed, pull the blanket up to our face like this, and just wait for it, because it was almost nightly that we were having visits, experiences, abductions.
Mm-hmm.
I hate the word abductions because it just seems so mean, and I don't know.
The term visit seems nicer. And
yes.
I enjoy, I guess, imagining your sister's perspective, like hearing her, the words we choose are important. So
Yes.
This is a child's perspective, and she's trying to make sense of what she's seeing, and to say the kings are coming.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's good. And the fact that you're not calling it an abduction, but a visit, to me it's indicative of, at least in this circumstance, a good encounter. I think that's.
I don't have any memories of anything really horrible happening to me.
That's
like you see things on TV where these women are still to this day. My sister is. I'm totally opposite. My sister is the total opposite of me. She refuses to talk about it. Mm-hmm. She will only talk to me and Rick about it. Mm-hmm. And she's only said they did something to me. Mm-hmm. And she will not go into detail.
And I believe that, and it's fair that she had a different and negative experience.
Yeah, she did.
That's life,
I, on the other hand, have not.
That's great. Oh man, it's amazing to me. I almost wish that we could get like an artist rendition of your sister's version of what the kings look like.
Yeah, I did draw. And when I drew it, I did a horrible version of it. But there was one being that I remember being around me all the time. And I told my mother back in the 90s, I call him the Elder. And for some reason, they have hair. They're not your typical bald little grays that everybody describes. That's the Elder.
Oh, cool.
They wear a long white robe. And there's an emblem on their left side that looks like a tetrahedron. When I was younger, I thought it was the Star of David. That's how I described it when I was younger, but it's not. It's a tetrahedron.
Okay.
Or a Merkaba, whatever you want to call it.
Okay. I'm familiar with the Merkaba as well.
Yes. The things that I've gone through my entire life, people will be like, yeah, okay. I've been trained how to fly one of their ships, one of their little skippers. I've met my hybrid one of my hybrid children. Tell them what?
Tell them the experience you felt a couple of years back when we went up to Dulce.
Oh yeah, I had an experience. I had two experiences. One I called the tower, and one I called the passenger, and that's how I described it in the book. We were in some kind of, I thought at first it was an airplane, but when I really took a look at how everybody was seated, it was not. It was more of a circular room, and everybody was seated kind of like with their knees up, but sunken into the floor in a chair. And when we took off, I looked out the window and I saw a mountain, a tower, and a small runway. When I got to Dulce, New Mexico for his conference, well, right before that, I started researching Dulce because I was new to New Mexico and I didn't know where Dulce was because I was driving. So I started researching everything, and there was a picture of Dulce Base, and I practically just fainted because it was like almost the exact of what I drew from what I remembered from my experience. It was crazy. So the top is my drawing of what I remembered. Mm-hmm. Here's the tower, here's the mountain, etc. And there's Dulce Base.
Nice.
It's better. If you look at it online, it's much better and clearer, but
this is the wonder of how our brains work. I always liked the movie Forrest Gump for many reasons, but there's a line in the beginning of that movie that it always struck a chord with me, and he just says, it's funny the things we remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it's just simply that true. Mm-hmm. I'm 45 years old, but the edit that my brain has allowed me to carry forth as my accessible memories, it's funny which ones it picks to give you immediate access to, and the ones that you have to work to, reconnect.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've noticed that it's my sense of smell that triggers memories.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And then there'll be, with that sense of smell, it's enhanced even more if I hear a certain sound in the atmosphere.
Yes.
And then it's just like, oh, I remember this from somewhere, and then the memory comes back.
Smell and sound triggers mine too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's almost deja vu-y type stuff, and I've had that before, a bunch actually. I love the concept of deja vu and the experience, because there is that reckoning moment, I guess you would say, where to me there's I call it like a hum. There's like a din, a change. There's a deepening of the sound in the room that occurs once I'm aware that I'm now in something I've been in before. Like all of a sudden, I'll be looking around, and all of a sudden I'm like, something will happen, and I'll be like, wait a minute, that vase on the table looks familiar, or something triggers, and then all of a sudden something else happens, and then all of a sudden I get the tones down, and then all of a sudden I get like the awareness, like all right, I know what's going on now. It's that again. Here it's one of those moments where now here we go. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. And it just wore off. Now I'm back to normal or something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But those deja vu moments last.
I've had it happen with walking into a room, and if things are arranged in a certain way, anything at all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's the dream I had 10 years ago. Now I understand.
Now, you have to stop saying the word dream, because your dreams are not dreams. They're experiences, or they're memories of an experience. They're not dreams. They're two.
But you're right. So what you and I would have to refer to everyone else as a deja vu moment for their comfort, in reality, is just realizing that the moment that you're having in that room at that time is in fact something that you previously experienced 10, 20, 30 years ago in what other people would use the term a dream.
Dream, exactly.
But now using their words, how do they explain what happened? That's what I do, because I get that they're not comfortable that it happened.
Right.
But using the words that they had, I'm just going to explain my experience would be, oh, wow, what's going on in the room right now is something that I did have in a dream 30 years ago. I've already seen this, and that was really cool. And people go, oh, it's just deja vu. It's just whatever you want to call it, but it just happened.
Yes. And those deja vus can happen with people too, not necessarily objects.
Yeah.
You can walk into a party that a friend invited you to, and walk up to somebody or happen to pass somebody and go, I know you. I did that the other day to this poor kid when we went to go get our windshield wipers changed at The name of the store?
It was AutoZone or something.
O'Reilly
yeah.
Auto Parts.
Mm-hmm.
The poor kid behind the counter must have thought this old lady is crazy. I insisted that I knew this kid, and I was like, do you go to school at, and I was just throwing things out, and he's like, no. It was so intense, that deja vu of knowing this kid. Who knows? I probably had an experience with him.
I kept looking at her like, why are you bothering this kid?
I know.
Oh, it's so funny though. I get what you were trying to do, but I do, like, this poor kid is probably like, lady, do you want these wiper blades?
And
What do you want, 10% off, lady? You giving me the I know you routine over wiper blades?
He wasn't even the one helping us. He was just behind the counter. The assistant manager was helping us, and I kept going towards that kid.
Oh, that's funny.
I felt so bad for him. But it's happened to me so many times, because the majority of my experiences that I remember, there's a group of people with us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of them are standing upright, but they're sedated to the point where they're like in a zombie state.
Mm-hmm.
They can move, but they don't understand what's going on around them. They're not with it. So who knows?
In a way, like, I'm just deciphering here. I'm doing random deciphering on the fly. I imagine in my head like that there are many people that get taken into these programs and used. Let's just say simply as cheap to free labor, right? But in that process of being used, there are people that are, let's say, up there, like down here, very complicit and very easy to manipulate.
Mm-hmm.
And they're probably like an as above, so below thing, that the vast majority of people can be very easily manipulated down here. They can be very easily manipulated up there. But then there's folks like you guys and myself who don't really seem to fit that majority. So I think here we are down here, opening our little mouths, and then probably up there, probably have similar issues. And these are just the way that other perspectives and realities work. And there's probably other systems for, discontents like yourself and myself. And, it is what it is. They wind up giving us TV channels and stuff instead, because they're like, well, there's got to be some sort of function for this.
Oh, God. I've had numerous experiences where I'm with other children. This is when I was younger. Up until the age of 10, I was always in like a classroom type setting with other children, but those children were not all humans. There was one child that was like, just like a little orb. There was another one that kind of looked like an octopusy type of being. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was, everybody asked me all the time, well, what beings have you seen?
Yeah.
Jeez, I can't even tell you. There's been so many. I'm 56 years old. This has been going on for 53 years. Mm-hmm. So, there was one vivid experience that I had that I still, if I close my eyes, I can see it to this day, was when I was introduced to one of my hybrid children, and my mother was with me. There were 3 beings that came in the doorway. One was small. It was the elder that I showed you. One was very tall, holding the baby. And then there was one kind of in between that height. And I had come across just recently somebody's drawing of their version of meeting their hybrid child. And again, I almost fell on the floor because it was almost exact with the 3 beings, one holding the baby. I know I'm not the only one out there that has had these experiences. And when I see these things, it's confirmation that I'm not totally nuts.
Correct. That's why I love that you guys are helping to get a platform to get people to have their voices out there. I know we had mentioned in a previous conversation that I like the idea of an 80-20 mentality on our memories and our experiences. That, I would say that more or less 80% of my life and your life, so to say, as an average, it fits within the words that we know to communicate in society and present as normal. But then the rest of the 20% is our experiences that we hold closer to our chest, because not only do they not make sense to us, they certainly then we don't have the words to explain to everybody else. And
Right.
society shows us that most individuals, as emboldened as they may think they are, they're not really going to put that out there. They'll keep that to themselves, and it just is what it is. But I really think nowadays there people as individuals and society collectively are more accepting of this 20%. So I want to really push hard to
Yes.
give an avenue for anybody. I mean, I know you guys are doing it with your platform. Here I am deciphering my experience as well. If people want to share and get their story out there, I plan on affording people that to just, if you want to do it publicly, privately, I can do it either way. You can call in anonymously. I can bring you in on a soundboard. If you think that there's information that people should have out there, let's do it. Let's bring it to the table. What's your 20%, and let's hear it. So let us know, let Rich and Linda know, and put your stuff in the comments. If you want to get a hold of me, by all means, you can email me. I've never put anybody's stuff to market that didn't want it there. But DecipheringMe369@gmail. If you have a story to share, let me know. But now, Richard, what about your first experience encounter? Where was that and what time?
I love how you go when he answers that.
Because I was laughing at I just want to point out, I did not want to write this book. I did not want to tell my story. He fought me. I fought him tooth and nail to get it out.
This is great. This is why I love that you guys are an SSP couple, because you guys are like, it's great. This is awesome, because you're like, I didn't want to talk about that I went to space. And now he made me.
He was like, you need to tell your story, because I'm sure there's other people out there that once they hear it, they're going to come forward and say, thank you. And that's exactly what happened. So many people here in New Mexico have said, thank you for telling us your story. This is what happened to me.
This is so great. I'm so happy you guys are sharing.
I had to chain it to the radiator to get it to finish it. So
it was horrible. Tell them about the day that I was assigned to you and what you
Actually, I was going to talk about the childhood experience. My first childhood recollection, or actually no, my first visual recollection was with my mother and my brother coming home from my grandmother's house. And my grandmother lived on one side of the town, we lived on the other. So it wasn't like we were just driving a couple blocks, okay? It would have taken about 20 minutes or so to get home.
This was on Long Island, presumably, back then?
Yeah, this was in Farmingdale.
Okay, 10-4.
So North Farmingdale traveling to South Farmingdale, okay? And
were you on 109?
This was coming down Staple Street towards Hempstead Turnpike.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're leaving our grandmother's house, and I'm looking up in the sky, and I see this strangely bright object or star in the sky that, for some reason, it caught my attention as not being normal. And I was pretty sure it caught my mother's eye too. So my brother and I, we get in the car, we drive home, we're leaving. The fact that this started at my grandmother's house pretty much, circles back around to it being a generational thing. But as we're driving home, we get down, we're driving down, getting closer and closer to Hempstead Turnpike. And I'm sitting in the front seat looking out the windshield. And all of a sudden I hear my mother say, "You see it too? You've been watching it?" I said, "Yeah, this started at Grandma's house. This thing is following us." And that's what it was doing. It left from the solitary position in the sky and started following us in the sky as we drove down the street in a very controlled manner. My brother started seeing it too. He's looking out the side window in the back seat. He says, "Yeah, I see it too." And so the three of us witnessed it. The real interesting part is that when we get to the red light at the intersection where Hempstead Turnpike is, we had to stopped there, and I'm trying to think, was it 109 or Hempstead Turnpike? Maybe it was 109. I'm trying to remember where the roads intersected, but we're at a major intersection, red light. We had to stop. Well, the thing in the sky decided to stop too and wait for us. So
I had a red light.
Yeah, stopped right there, slowed down, and the three of us are like, "Do you see that? It's not moving now." And I said, "Yeah." And while we were there waiting for the red light to turn green, this thing decided to start making L-shaped maneuvers in the sky.
Wow.
So it would start moving one way and then make a right angle this way, all slow movements, nothing fast, very controlled, like this, like it was in a hover pattern. And then when the red light turned green, we started going the rest of the way to get home. Then it started following us again. And then it disappeared down the tree line and lowered down into the sky. And then we didn't see it again for the rest of the night. But that was at the age of about 11 years old. And that began a very strange cycle in my life of every 10 years on the 11th year. So, of course, when was the next significant event to happen? 10 years later when I turned 21. And then the next thing after that was 10 years later when I was 31. And then after that, 41. So
your cycles matter. I'm sitting in front of a chart right here that I made for my own timeline.
Yeah.
This is based off of Itzhak Bentov's stuff with the CIA remote viewing program. And by tracking things that happened in my 10-year cycles, I was able to equate my 20-year and back cycles and all that type of fun stuff. But I just wanted to interject. So your time period for this first event, coming home from your grandma's in Farmingdale, you said you were 11 years old. So that would have put you in the mid 80s?
81.
81.
Okay.
And it ended up inspiring me to write a book report for school on UFOs, which I saved after all these years and found it again, because I didn't realize at the time my mom had saved all this stuff. And she decides, you know, because she was into all these experiences too, she decides to pull a folder out one day of old kindergarten, preschool, grade school drawings, book reports, everything. I was like, "You've been saving all this stuff? I forgot about all of this. I don't, you know." And she knew what my story was and the experiences I was having. And she says, "Look at what I found." And she pulls out this old construction paper, a magic marker drawing of this. And I think this was when I was in pre-K or nursery school, as they used to call it back then. It was a picture of a very strange tall being with a large head and some kind of a ray shooting out of it. And she says, "Do you remember doing this?" I said, "Barely." And I said, "Oh my God, I did that when I was that young?" She goes, "Yep, I saved it all these years." So that, I think, was a very early depiction of what I refer to in the book as the crone, which has been a consistent being always there. Now, that was the first visual real-time recollection, that UFO sighting of that object following us home all the way.
I'm loving that this was theoretically at the same time I was riding my bike around in the same communities, basically. So I love that this is bringing it closer to home to me. So thank you. I picture myself sleeping in my bed at Levittown while you were driving home that night.
Yes.
You know, we're not talking far distances here, folks.
No, it's not.
These are neighboring communities that he's saying that he was driving around his community. There's a UFO, and I'm loving that I know the proximity of me on that night.
And Uniondale, where my experiences were, is not far from you guys either.
Not at all. These are all stones throw away from each other.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm really excited about talking to you guys, because I think in the future, we're going to dig deep into Long Island, because it's odd 6 waves from Sunday. There's not a town that you can touch that doesn't have a peculiar set of buildings in it.
Yes.
At the very least, you can't go anywhere on Long Island without finding something that's subterfuge.
Do you remember the conversation you and I had the other day about George Washington?
Yes.
And the lighthouse? I was talking to my sister about it last night, about George Washington and Long Island being the CIA secret piece of property, etc. She goes, there's a plaque somewhere in Freeport where she still lives, where George Washington passed through.
Wow.
Yeah.
They have those all up in the Melville area and north of that, up in Smithtown and along the North Shore. They have all these routes of all these houses that are historic markers for being part of the spy rings and stuff like that. Yeah, it's never stopped over here, or I should say over there, Long Island. Yeah, it's just been a hotbed of activity forever. The Montauk Indians, what was going on out there, that lighthouse that got slapped up instantaneously. I follow what's going on over in the Brookhaven, Yap Hank area. Upton, it's often called. They keep changing the names on it depending on how they want to talk about it. But that effectively is the Wardenclyffe area where Tesla was at. So that's all very, very important geologically and energetically.
Okay.
And then also don't forget the communities that we were nearby in the Farmingdale area. We have the wonderful facility in Bethpage known as Grumman.
Yes, Grumman Air Force Base. Yes.
Oh my goodness. I mean, that's, people want to talk about space and space programs. There's really like no more of an underdog facility in this country than Grumman facility in Bethpage, Long Island. I mean, they did build the lunar module. Technically, we might want to give them some credit for being involved in the programs a little bit.
And before that, when I was growing up, because you guys are younger than me, there was Mitchell Field.
Heck yeah, absolutely. The cradle of aviation.
Yes, and Mitchell Field's hangars are still there, because I was on Long Island about 6 years ago.
Yes.
They still have things in it.
Yes. I serviced a lot of the buildings in that area.
Yeah.
And even though
the
they're
Coliseum is right by there.
They're no longer military-owned buildings. They've been hand transferred to other people. It doesn't change their infrastructures or substructures. There's a lot of substructures on Long Island that exist now that are in theoretically private hands.
I'm pretty sure that the underground areas from Mitchell Field have tunnels connecting to all the other tunnels that don't exist.
One of the weirdest buildings I was ever in my life was up Stewart Avenue from Mitchell Field. Just a stone's throw from Mitchell Field. But it was a very interesting commercial building across the street from the massive Marine Corps Reserve facility on the backside of Mitchell Field there.
Okay.
And I had, I had a plumbing company in Long Island that I would get weird customers. I mean, it is what it is. I had a fringe lifestyle. I would look into fringe things my whole life, trying to decipher my experience. And lo and behold, I get a phone call. And long story short, I wind up getting information, sometimes in the form of a communication or books. Lots of times I was just handed books, or other times it would just be a very peculiar exposure or experience. And in this time I went to this building and it was, this address, blah, 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 go to such and such floor, suite number, whatever. And it was one of these weird things where in the middle of going to the job, I had to stop and call one of my friends, give him my warning phone call. Like, hey, if you don't hear from me in 15 minutes, call the cops and send them to this address, because things were just getting weird. And that happens sometimes. But in this particular one, I get in the elevator, it told me which elevator to go to. Like, not, go to the building, go to such and such elevator, I got in the elevator and it let me out onto a balcony up at like the third floor. And the only thing that balcony did was either allow you to jump off the balcony or then get in another elevator and then go again.
Oh my God.
Wow.
It was a different level of security than I had ever seen before, because it was like, all right, get out of the elevator, stand on this platform where you're now trapped.
Yes. That is wild.
I was like, I hope I didn't piss anyone off and there's not a sniper right now. Because now, what's this? Where am I right now? It's just a big empty area. There's nothing. And then there's the option to turn around and get in the other elevator now, because now that one opened up.
Holy
So
cow.
Did you go down or up after that?
I would have no way to know, right? Great question. I have no idea. But oftentimes I would go to buildings where I would get peculiarly long elevator rides that I was told was going to be in the basement. But
Right.
really, really, really deep basement, apparently. And there's these really awkward silences because these elevators didn't have elevator music, and it would just be like, some maintenance staff guy that, has a trillion keys, and he's just trying to jingle the keys to break the silence. And it was like, I know we were on ground level, and I know safety first, but this has got to be either the slowest elevator in the world, or you have a few sub levels we're not discussing.
I'm sure one of the buttons probably said ninth circle of hell or something like that. So
I'll tell you what, there's a couple of facilities. There's a couple of times where I was very apprehensive about what was going to happen when that door opened.
Mm-hmm. Or what you were going to come in contact with too. So
and something, and lots of people have, it is what it is. The circles that I run in now, lots of people tease me because they go, well, that's exactly what did happen, but they also just effectively wiped you.
Yeah.
But I have a recollection of a standard plumbing repair.
Yes.
Right.
Maybe that's what the elevator did. It was,
You had a
yeah, maybe upon rising back up again, you just get the insert memory of, hey, you just did a toilet repair down there real quick.
Yep.
Okay. There you go. Yes. I could see that being the case. The elevator does the job. Yep.
I've had many discussions with other people about how I have a lot of missing gaps in my memory. To me, it's like watching a slideshow.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have, except for a few memories, I don't have a lot of moving movies in my head of memories. It's more of a slide of that scene, a slide of that scene, big gaps in between, or insert in between those slides some moving picture.
It is an interesting way of looking at it. I often wonder how other people's memory banks work, and the slides are great. So I'm thinking of, remember the old slide machines that you drop them into the ring? So perfect example, right? So it's like you have your ring, right? Let's say it holds 360 slides in that ring, but in reality, you don't have 360 slides in there. You have a few over here, a few over here, a few over here. You have the gaps that you're talking about. I get that. I feel like my brain is the same way, but I wonder if others folks' brains are like that, or if they have the 360 thing going on.
We won't know unless they come forward and say what they need to say.
Well, I mean, even just not even just in this general topic. I mean, in life in general. If our brains, yours and mine, are different than others who have a full slide set.
Do you have missing slides, or do you have a full slide set? Because some of his memories are so detailed. That's why his books are like.
I have like.
We can still have very detailed slides.
Yeah.
And not have a full slide set.
I'll have whole giant pockets of recall, and then there'll be a blank spot.
So you do have missing slides then.
And then there'll be a whole giant pocket.
Yeah.
And then logically I fill in the gaps as to what would have happened in between. So
and then the weird thing too is some people have a full slide wheel, but they can't focus on each slide with such clarity and give the details like Richard or you or I on the few slides that we have. So again, it's still funny, the things we remember.
I know. It is. It's very odd.
And I think that has a lot to do with keying in with the 10-year cycle I've always experienced.
I love that you keyed in on that. That's way part of what I've been doing with my timeline. And that was recommended from Tony Rodriguez, who is an SSP experiencer, is to physically write down your timeline. And that actually did help me out to start calculating. And physically, now I have a visual representation that helps my brain, because now when I start to think of things like that, and I go, well, what year was that? And I can start to assess that, well, that means this, and there's a negative energy that according to this line, then that means that I'm probably going to have a good year at this point or that point. But regardless, these things, you can't argue once you start seeing the math adding up. I have a definitive 10-year cycle of positive things. I have a definitive 10-year cycle of negative things. And I can watch as those lines cross through the decades. And I can start to actually assess the things that were going on in my life at those times. And at that point, there's calculations that could be made.
Yes.
You know, and then the consideration to be, well, if I'm just learning this, what if there are others that knew this before me? You know, just like the farmer would seem to be for the best interests of his animals, to be working them efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
I would just suggest that maybe there's an overseer level in either our society or higher,
Right.
also understands these energies and wields and works with them as well. And just as much as the cow or the sheep may not understand the machinations of what's going on by the farmer or the farm, they're still living on one.
Yeah. Right. Right.
You know, so what's going on here, I find very questionable from our perspective, because there are energies going on for periods that most people aren't paying attention to the frequencies and things like that. And it has to have bearing. It can't mean nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had any weird things going on lately where you, like today when I called you and I said, I could have sworn I saw your Zoom meeting, because I really did remember seeing it in an email.
That's interesting. That's almost like a Mandela effect thing. So I don't want to be mean, but I don't think I ever sent you an email about the Zoom link.
No, you didn't. But I'm saying these are the weird things that have been happening to the two of us lately. It's almost like we're remembering a different timeline.
She's telling me it's there, and I'm combing through the emails, and I'm telling her, no, it's not. It's not here.
But there was a few other things this past week too that, like I woke up and I could have sworn I told him something, and then I asked him later on that day, and he's like, no, we didn't have that conversation, or something that he said he remembers doing, and he asked me about it. And I'm like, no.
I've remembered us having a conversation before we have it, and I'm like, yeah, you told me that already. And Linda's like, no.
Oh my God, that was a creepy one. Yes.
I said, no, I didn't tell you anything about that. I said, well, I remember having the conversation lock, stock, and barrel from beginning to end. So
it's, I think
it happens.
Timelines crossing over.
Crossing.
Yeah.
There is stuff going on right now, I believe, with energies, technologies, actions. I don't have all of the answers. All I can do is just say, like, from an observational perspective, I can see that these programs have had great power through the years. It does seem observationally that these programs are losing their power.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
just want to be there to help people with the fallout. Is basically where Penny and I are coming from, is that there's folks like you and I that have done the due diligence and done the work, connecting our, fringe experiences and things like that to do stuff. And that's great that that's happening. But I that's like, it's, to me, it's similar to, like, if you're in a bad community, right? If you're in a rough neighborhood and you're the tough kids on the block because you go out and you engage and you do stuff, well, that's great. My hat goes off to you and you're doing the work. But now I feel like it's like other people are going to show up into this community, not realize what's going on, and they're about to get sucker punched. So I respect that you guys walked the path that you did, but I'm less concerned about folks like you in the future, because I feel like you're strong enough to deal with what's coming. You're aware, you're looking at it, you know what's going on. You might get hit, but it's not going to be a sucker punch.
No.
So I'm more concerned with the lesser folks that are going to get that sucker punch and they need some help, because there's a truth that was just withheld from them. There's intentions of others over many eons to hide the truth. And we're just at a spot in time where we're going to have the veils removed, and people are going to, I guess, get confused, scared, hurt. A lot of negative stuff I see coming from it. Fear, anger.
It's going to be like PTSD symptoms from like vets coming back from a battle. Mm-hmm. That's what they're going to be acting like.
And I think that's why we see a lot of crazy insanity going on right now in the community. People just losing their minds because... And
the arguing back and forth between people. It's like there's a big division between us. And I think it's all because of what you just said, that there is a change coming. The veil is going to be lifted off, and it's causing that intense friction with everybody.
Yeah.
I'll go so far as to say that I think in the intensity of this moment, that anger is actually
fear.
No, it's fear. It's mechanized fear. There is literally a machine that they can turn the dial up on now.
Yes.
to cause everyone to be enraged
Mm-hmm.
and at their wits' end. They can be held at that high level of, it's like the start of a race, right? Gentlemen, start your engine. They bring them up to the starting line, and then they bring their RPMs up, and everybody's getting ready. And that's where they have us at. We're all revved at high RPMs. We're all at red line right now.
Yeah.
It's a manufactured position.
Yeah.
And it is the death throes of an enemy that still has its hands on that level of a machine.
Yeah.
It's
I think
actively happening, but soon that enemy is actually about to die, and their hand will fall off of that machine, and that frequency will go away.
Yeah, it's I still love the infamous line from Blade Runner, where Rutger Hauer finally tracks down the scientist who created him. Okay, and Frankenstein's monster is coming face to face with the creator, and the scientist says to him, he says, you know, a light bulb burns at its brightest just before it goes out, and he says, you are burning very brightly right now. And that was his way of saying you're about to die because your life is running out, your expectancy. So, and that's what we see happening here is, you know, people being backed into a corner and screaming like a stuck pig at this point, you know, with this panic-ridden, like loss of control. Richard Dolan has said it himself. He says, people who have power or are in power are not going to give it up. Yeah. So, and that's where the panic attack comes from.
I do believe that we experiencers do have a job once this veil is lifted to help these other people, because they're going to need somebody to go to. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we have been prepped to do. We might not remember all of it, but when the veil is lifted, I think it's going to activate us to remember what our jobs are going to be for these other people that it's all new to them.
Yeah.
I think of it like when a problem happens on the job site, you know, there's, you know, everything's going great. All of a sudden there's this big explosion. You do have to first mend everything, fix everything, get things back up and running again. But then what always happens is the root cause analysis starts, and then people have how did this happen? Mm-hmm. Pops up right away. So I think that's where we're going to come in with things like Fringe TV, Deciphering My Experience, Global Enlightenment Radio Network is going to be the avenue for people to have explained to them, how did this happen?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's going to have to be some kind of a financial support system put in place, because one of the realizations that's going to cause a lot of anger and hatred in the realization is, I spent all these years busting my ass for some piece of garbage paycheck that went nowhere and did nothing other than pay bills that I didn't have to pay in the first place. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do for me now?
I don't think the financial system is going to survive all of that, so there's no point.
But there'll be others who step in. I'm not talking about the given financial system. I'm talking about others who are waiting in the wing to step in and replace it and say, okay, here is the bandage to fix this festering wound, okay, to make people feel better about it. Because there's going to be a lot of explaining for that too. Why did I have to pay this utility bill when you were holding back on Tesla technology? You know,
great question. Yes, yes, those are fantastic big picture questions. Yes, because I've already been asking that stuff. That's kind of the angle that I come from in saying that we're not free. We're not off the farm.
Right.
We're already in this prison situation, you know, that we're being cared for in a way and attended to, and not shown the truth about possibilities or realities. You know, we have all these, you know, commercials that you see on the propaganda machines that say, you know, a greener future and newer technologies. And the reality is those are lies. Those are total lies. Like you just said before, they're not going to give up the power. Well, that works for technologies and corporations too, and energies and resources. They're not going to give up the oil industry for you get free energy industry.
And once in a while,
we'll have to fight for it, but they're not going to just give it to us.
once in a while too, to keep people at bay or pacified, they'll throw you a bone with it. Somebody will be sacrificed. And I'm trying to think of the one example would be, what was the name of the power company that was really, was operating in California and really raking everybody over hot coals and then went bankrupt? I'm trying to think
that was N-Star.
Okay, yeah.
Not N-Star. I'm sorry. That's the local utility up here. It's M.
And it
was the big debacle that they blew up.
Yeah.
All the paperwork was in World Trade Center 7.
So, you have power companies like that.
Enron.
Yeah,
yes.
That's it. Enron. I was trying to think of it. And
sorry, we have N-Star as our local utility up here, so I got confused.
So that was a situation that was so bad that they decided, okay, we'll just serve that up as the sacrificial lamb to make everybody happy and put them all back to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, the CEOs walked away with no problem. Everybody's pension got destroyed, or 401k plan went out the window. All these employees, nobody was there to walk in and fill the gap. So now you have all those employees who bought into that system who now walked away betrayed or feeling betrayed or very bitter. And that's a gaping hole that was not repaired.
Right.
Okay.
That was a manufactured bubble for the purposes of bursting it. That whole energy futures commodities market was just like the real estate futures commodities market. It was manufactured to fail.
Yeah.
That's what big power players actually do in the money world. Here's how the stock market actually works. It goes up every single day. It'll grow every single day over time, left to its own devices in a natural market. Well, rich people don't have time to wait for their money like that. So the power comes in being a market manipulator. Market manipulators learn how to crash a market. That's the power. When you're big enough in an industry that you can facilitate a massive drop, and you can predict that, and you can talk with your friends about that, that's where the money's at. You sell your stuff the day before the big drop that you control. Everybody else loses their shirts, and you come in, buy low the next day, because no money gets lost on the stock exchange. Everybody seems to think that. On the day that the stock market tanks, they go, we lost all of our money. Ah! No one lost money. It just got relocated to the rich guy that was the market manipulator for the day that tanked the market that day.
Yeah.
And his friends.
It's not like the good old days where you had mom and pop capitalism that grew up to be a big company and still had the value of investing in the future with their employees.
Right.
Nowadays, and nowadays I mean from the 1980s on to now, there was this cutthroat mentality of, I'm just in it for me. What am I going to get in the next 5 to 10 years? And then screw everybody else, I'm out. So the CEOs that were being sideloaded into these corporations, which had nothing to do with growing up with that corporation from the ground up, they were just like, okay, I'm raking everyone over hot coals. I have no connection to these employees. I could care less about them. They could die. And I'm going to take it for whatever I can get and then walk away so I can have my jet and my $1 million house and all the hookers that I want, all that crap, And meanwhile, the average Joe Schmo from the neighborhood, he or she gets screwed. So, because then all of a sudden it's like, well, the CEO got what they wanted. That caused the company to go bankrupt. And now everybody's on the unemployment line. It's, this mentality of too big to fail. Well, okay, that's an argument that could go both ways because of the little guy on the bottom who was ultimately going to get screwed no matter what. But the CEOs didn't get penalized. They still got to walk away with their wealth. The corporation went into court and said, no, you have to give that back to Mr. and Mrs. Jones because that belongs to the employees. They didn't have to do that.
It used to be very different prior to taxation and the IRS. It used to be that companies, corporations had to have a greater part in the community. If they wanted to bring their products or services into a community, they had to invest in it.
Yeah.
So I was just, like people don't know Steinway pianos back in New York. In order for him to get his pianos from his shop, he was investing in putting a tunnel under the water from Manhattan to Brooklyn, Queens. That happens not like that anymore. Now you'd have to tax and figure and do all this stuff. It used to just simply be, if you wanted to bring your products or services from where your factory was to where the people are, you had to also build a road. And then when you built the road, like in the case of Mr. Steinway, you would then have to incorporate all of your overhead into the price of your product. That's all. A piano costs this much because in order for me to get it to you, I had to build a piano, a factory, a road, a wagon, buy a horse. But regardless, the end user didn't really ever actually have to worry about any of those things. They just simply looked at the price tag and bought it or not.
Yeah.
That's capitalism. That's how it's supposed to work. What happened back then was that the politicians and the corporations got into bed with each other, and they decided, you know what? We don't like having to pay for the roads every time we want to ship a piano somewhere. So we don't want that to be part of our overhead. We'd rather have the people and the infrastructure happen on a local level, blah, blah, blah. We want to be out of the mix. That's the intent that got this going on, folks. And let's just honestly assess where we're at today. By not doing it the way that we used to, not having the companies intimately involved in the communities, and then having all of these other hands in the mix, because that's technically what happened. It used to just be that one company would figure out how to get the road built. Nobody got in their way. You got a road, you got the piano. Now, to get that piano, you have a company building the piano. You have a taxpayer that's paying taxes. You got a politician that now has a department that needs to figure out how to get those taxes to the right. Like, it's insane what's going on right now. This is not efficient.
No.
When do you think that changed? 70s?
Yeah,
I want to say like 75-ish, right?
It would have changed there because by the time the 1980s came along, you had the corporate hostile corporate takeovers.
Yes, that was a whole different corporate environment. Now into like battlefield tactics and Sun Tzu Art of War. But this would be when did we get back into corporate exchange with China?
Corporate exchange with China. I thought that would have been the 90s at that point. What followed through on the next decade.
Interesting. I thought we opened the doors to that like in the 70s, I thought.
Hold on, I'm Googling.
Well, that could have been because
I feel like very close to when we started doing more business deals with China. I think got to, like you said, the corporate rating stuff like that was going on.
Well, that's what I said. That things started changing around 75.
That's what I'm thinking is one of the. I'm agreeing that the time period. I think it had to do with the interaction with Chinese.
That would match up when Nixon opened the door to China at that point. So
tricky Nicky.
Yeah. So that's things start evolving that way.
Corporate practices went out the window then. It was dog eat dog in the computer industry and information and data and things like that. And it was a new control mechanism, I think, when the computers came to market. I was just thinking about this hardly the other day, that my grandfather was a very, I guess, technically skilled person in Ma Bell post-World War II all the way through the 80s. And, lest we forget, prior to computers and stuff like that, when you're talking about the information superhighway, I would suggest that somebody who had access to the Ma Bell system in Manhattan had some access to some info.
Yeah.
And when you want to talk about accessing info back in the day, would be really easy when you're talking just phone lines. You know how easy it would be to steal information in a mechanical phone world prior to computers? People talk about corporate rating nowadays and stuff like that. But think about how easy it was technically back in the day to throw on a telephone repairman's outfit. And get all the intel you want from anywhere.
Go back even a little bit further when we had live operators connecting phone calls.
Yes. Yes. And you would have to, wonder if Lucy, you would make your phone calls because, if Lucy was on the operator line last night, she's going to hear everything and she's going to tell the whole town.
Exactly. Or she was paid by somebody to get information for whoever they needed it.
That works too. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there used to be another person involved.
Oh, definitely.
Yes, operator, I would like H4239.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. And they would listen in.
Yep. Yeah. My grandfather actually had a test rig that you could simply, it had two alligator clips, and you could walk to any phone junction, clip these two things on, and it had a little dial,
Mm-hmm.
and make a phone call.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Anywhere there was a phone line, you didn't need anything more than that.
Nope.
And people think that nowadays we're so advanced and so this and so that. We already had, like, my grandfather was walking around with his little phone kit. He could have made a phone call wherever he wanted, whenever he wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Decades before cell phones.
Yeah.
Yes.
In our technological history here, the industry competition at the time between digital versus analog came down to how can we stick it to Japan, because the Japanese had gone so far with advancing analog technology and said, look, this is how far we can go with this. Look at what we've done. And the US was like, screw them. We don't want them dominating the market. We're going to go with digital, and cut the legs out from under the analog side. So that's when everything went digital. Okay. Even to the point of producing forms of technology that weren't even necessary, like Blu-ray disc. I mean, to this day, you get people bragging about it. It's like, who cares? Okay. DVD was good enough. Blu-ray is basically techno vomit. Okay. So, yes, it's awesome technology, but in the end of it all, it's just like, did I really care about that? Storing massive archives of information? Yeah, I get that, but the government had that already. So what are you bragging about with Blu-ray disc? Oh, it's just awesome. And you can interact with other people while you're... I don't want to interact with other people while I'm watching a movie. I want everybody to shut the fuck up so I can watch the movie. Sorry.
But no, I get the gist of it. Yeah. I mean, at what point, how many things do you have to combine into an activity for them to say that it makes it more fun versus just more complex and distracting?
I know. And it's just this scatterbrain mentality of this constant, commenting on just using a movie as example. You're supposed to sit there and enjoy the story. Okay, it's bad enough I can't get someone to read a book. At least I can get you to shut up and watch a movie. Okay, but this baboon mentality, especially in the sci-fi community, the geek mentality of bitching and moaning and nitpicking of it. Who gives a damn? You're supposed to enjoy the story. Did you even pay attention to the plot line? There was a beginning, a middle, and an end. Can you recite that to me instead of complaining about whether or not the revised version of the old Star Trek episodes took the coffee stain off of Spock's shirt? I mean, really, this is how stupid it gets with these people.
There is a certain level of minutia that blows my mind that people tend to, because it's like, in a way, it totally doesn't have my interest until it's almost just interesting me that that's where their brain was at.
Yeah.
It's weird how people think, how they function. I've said this to my girlfriend before. I said, it's like, and I forget where someone else told me this, and she's extremely considerate. So she's always trying to figure out where people are coming from so that she can consider. And I always, I guess I'm less considerate, but I've also heard other people say that, trying to figure out what's going on in somebody else's head is one of like the most ridiculous efforts that you can try to get involved with. I mean, you can have the best of intentions, but for me to try to ascertain what's going on in your head, it'd be a lot quicker just to ask than to just and think that I'm going to get to the, I'm going to do what Linda needs because I'm going to divine out what's going on in her head right now, because I must be able to figure out what's going on in her head. So I'm going to just make a choice and go with that instead of discussing it with her. I'm just going to.
Yeah, no.
How's that work for you usually, Richard?
No, it's better to have that discussion, because trying to figure it out on my own.
I already told him he does not want to go in there.
I don't want to go in there.
He'd come out crying.
I think this is probably why my psychic powers shut down, because of that reason. So,
well, this is some of the technology that these transhumanists are trying to purport as the next best thing in the future. Is that these technologies will allow these accesses as if, right? Here's the pretense, right? This is disgusting to me. It's like as if Richard and Linda, like as if you guys I mean, don't you want to love each other more and know every single thing and give that access to your partner? How dare you hold that from them? But
Yeah,
that's the scary thing is that's what they're presenting it as. Like, you know, if you love someone enough, you'll let them walk around in your head. It has nothing to do that this is a false sales pitch. And we're just trying to get the technology in there so that we as a corporation can have access, but we're going to sell it by pulling on your heartstrings, like you're holding back from your partner by not letting them get access to your memory banks. Are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
But this is what's coming.
My attitude is you either trust your partner or you don't. And you want to learn to get to know them. Okay.
Well, then we're not human then. If we spend so much time in each other's heads, that
you're not distinctly separate experiences. It's unfair to your experience, right? So Linda, you've lived X amount of years. Your life is literally a DVD set that's the same length of your life as your life. So let's just imagine, forget access to the head. Let's just say I could take a DVD set of your whole life and then Richard's whole life. But in order for me to understand your life, I'd actually have to sit down and watch every second of every DVD. And now I'm not living my life, I'm living your life.
Right, exactly.
So these are all shenanigans to think that at any point in time, I can actually have access to your memory banks and then learn more about who you are. No, I'm just going to get a more more in context picture that's still taken out of context. It's going to be a tighter context outside of a bigger context that I'm still never going to get 55 years to put it in context. So it's really just going to piss me off technically. Right? If I got to walk around in your head and get a tighter view, it's just a tighter moment. Still totally out of context. I'll still never understand you. It's just going to give me 1,000 more questions in a more pointed capacity.
Right. And then,
that's not going to help anybody.
There's the issue of, you know, are you looking at it objectively or subjectively? Your definition of, you're going to bring a black and white definition of right and wrong to the table instead of looking at it in context of why that occurred. Right. Okay. So, you know, there's this general umbrella of right and wrong that we all pretty much get. But then there's also the subjective experiential thing of right and wrong as to why things happen, cause and effect, action and reaction. So
speaking of
but she wouldn't want to be in my head anyway, because
honey,
if I get stuck
around.
If I get stuck on the color yellow and I decide to analyze everything about the color yellow, it would drive her nuts.
Speaking of cause and effect, action and reaction, you have to tell them the story of Don't Touch in the ship.
Oh, okay.
I was 11 years old. It was the day of my initiation into the sisterhood, which is the benevolent group that I told you I've been around for a long time.
Okay.
He was with me.
Yeah.
Take it away, Richard.
We're the two of us are standing outside a doorway.
You got pulled away from me, remember? You started crying at first.
That was.
Or was that a totally separate incident?
That was a separate thing.
Okay, never mind.
We're both standing outside the doorway with the praying mantis being I refer to as the crone. And it's a metal corridor, almost like a metallic blue type corridor from floor to ceiling, you know, this whole long, but at the end of it is these two large doors. They looked strangely like large wooden doors, heavy doors. And
what's on his ceiling is what the light that was coming out from the door.
Yeah. There was a bluish glow coming out because it was open. It was slightly ajar. And I could see through. I wasn't allowed to go in because the crone was bringing Linda in there. And the crone turns around to me and says, "Stay here. Don't touch anything.
Mind you,
right
he's
back."
4.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I couldn't go in. And she says, "Stay right here. Don't move. Don't touch anything. I'll be right back." So they walk in, and while the door was open, I could see there was a blue light coming down to the center of this auditorium theater-style seating. And there were a lot of different people, entities, beings in there. And I had a sense that there was some entity or being teleported into the middle of that congregation with that blue light, talking to everybody.
It was for me.
Yeah, it was some kind of a...
lesson?
No, it was an initiation ceremony of my coming to age at 11.
Yeah.
In their eyes.
And there may have been others in there for the initiation too. I'm not sure because I couldn't see much. But when the crone walks in with her, she goes to shut the door, but the door, whether intentionally or not, was left just ajar enough for me to see through the crack. Well, I got bored standing there for a while waiting. I wasn't allowed to look in. And so there was this other closet door at the end of the corridor that all of a sudden I'm thinking, what's in there? So I go over and walk up to it. The door opens up by itself. And inside was this, for a 4-year-old, there's this really cool looking device in there. It's like a large transparent cylinder. And it looked like there were some kind of electronic contraptions inside that were all linked together. Some kind of, it was taller than me at 4 years old. So I was like, wow, that looks cool. So what's that about? I go up and of course I touch it, and because I wanted to see what it was all about. Well, as soon as I put my hand on it, it triggered something in the device, this capsule device. All of a sudden it turned on, so to speak, and started to glow from the inside. And you see the components inside glowing this kind of like ultraviolet glow from inside, the glass structure. And it decides to lift itself off the floor and start floating out of the closet. Well, now I'm thinking, oh, I am in a lot of trouble. I wasn't supposed to touch that, and I don't know how to turn it off or put it back. So in an effort to get it to stop to move, what does a 4-year-old do? He jumps on it and decides to give it a bear hug, arms and legs wrapped around it. The thing is still lifted off the floor and now carrying me down the hallway with it as I'm trying to figure out how to stop it. Well,
you're doing a great job of standing still and not touching anything, by the way.
Yeah.
Great job. Yeah. That was, yeah.
Great.
So as I'm holding on to it now, the thing, it was almost like me on a pogo stick. Now it's bouncing and hitting the floor down the hallway with me on it as it's trying to stay afloat. And at that point, it caused such a commotion as it was slamming into the corridor floor, okay, and making this boom sound, that the crone finally had to come out, saw what was going on with me, with the wave of her hand, grabbed the device, turned it off, and it floated back into the closet, and the closet closed. Here I am on the ground now, looking down the corridor. She's at one end, I'm at the other, and I saw what was happening as it was hitting the corridor floor. It was actually punching holes through the floor to the point where you could now see down into other levels of the ship we were on, okay? And there were these other alien beings looking over the ledge on the other levels, looking up like, what the hell was going on up there? And what happened? And the crone just looked at me like,
I told you not to touch anything.
I told you to stay right here and not touch anything.
And that cosmic pole saw kit.
So that was that story of me damaging the corridor on the ship there and causing serious damage to the floor structure.
That's funny.
So, yeah. Mm-hmm. And
that would make a great scene in a movie, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I could totally see that.
Going down the hallway on an energized pogo stick of some sort.
In my mind's eye, I almost think of it as having some sentience and it knowing better than you even knew at the time. And it was like, come on, get off, kid, get off. And it's like trying to bounce you off. Like, we're going to get in trouble.
Yes.
Meanwhile, I'm thinking, oh, I am so screwed. I can't even stop this thing.
I'm in trouble.
It's like that moment in Fantasia when Mickey Mouse realizes he's screwed because there's too many broomsticks and too much water.
That moment of the reckoning, that line that gets crossed.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was that experience. And I just remember looking down through one of the holes in the floor that I had made, and these other entities looking up like, what the hell just happened? What was that?
Tell them about the time we were wandering around the ship.
Oh, yeah.
The room that we came across.
Another time we were exploring a ship that we were on, and we came to a certain large arched doorway that was pitch black. And we were like, oh, what's in there? Nobody ever goes in there. And so
he's the one who was saying, oh, what's in there?
Yeah.
I'm the one trying to keep him from touching things.
And I'm like, let's go in there and check it out. So as soon as we walked in, lights on the floor, like ambient lights on the flooring, lit up the room. Okay. Not to the point where you could see the whole room, but just enough where you could see the walkway you were supposed to be on, and that there was some depth to this room. It wasn't just some nebulous dark spot in the wall that you walked through. And it was a rather large, cavernous room. And then as we're walking along the path, like, we noticed there was just enough light to realize there were these dark pylons
in rows,
all lined up along
the
the pathway on both sides. And like, wow, what's those? What do they do? Why are they in here? And then once we said that, it's like there was some kind of a mental or psychic link, and all of these canisters or pylons started turning around towards us. There was a certain section, almost like a fishbowl section, okay, with glass that was concave to the shape of the pylon, but it was this clear, transparent, liquid-filled section, and inside that were these small hybrid children, babies, fetuses,
thousands upon thousands of them in rows, all the way as far as we could see.
They started talking to us in our minds
telepathically,
and then I guess we kind of realized why we shouldn't have been in there, because we woke them up and they were confused at seeing us, because they were like, we know you're like us, but why are you walking around like that? We're in here. Why are we in the tank? We don't understand. We thought this was normal, or something to that effect. Mm-hmm. Like, they started trying to communicate with us, but they were confused as to who we were and why we were walking around freely on the walkway. So we ended up, getting out of the room after looking around a little more, and just hoped that they would go back to sleep at that point and turn back the other way. But that was an interesting experience too.
And your age at the time that you would have entered this room, both of you, would have been what?
For me, I was about, I think, 5 years old.
5 or 6.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was probably
about
12-ish.
Yeah.
Interesting. I guess I'm thinking of the perspective of the lined up fetuses and why they would have this awareness of you, and then B, the wherewithal to have the consideration that you were out and they were in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my after that experience I had at 11 years old with my mom and my brother, I didn't think much more of it. I was always into UFOs and the paranormal. We always watched everything from In Search Of to Star Trek. I grew up, my generation, on the Star Wars movies and all that. But the reality of it didn't impact me until I had my first awakening at the age of 21. And that's when all of a sudden this cluster bomb hit me, and I had that awakening about what had been going on all my life, from all the way back to the age of 4.
What year was this that you turned 21?
It would have been 1991. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and it came back as a massive total recall up to a certain point. And that was the point where I guess that was the right age to have things come about, because then the praying mantis entity I refer to as the crone decided to make herself known to me.
This was 91?
Yeah. And at that point, that's when
a season or a month. Could you tighten it up in 91 to like what time of year it was? Like could you get real precise as to when
his birthday is December.
Okay.
So it's the end of the year, obviously, because he had just turned 21.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, 10-4. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's when she came forward and decided, okay, this is who I am. I am that entity that's been watching you since 4 years old in the background. I am the one that's been involved with your mother and your grandmother. Okay. So this is when all this stuff started coming about. And it was right at that time frame that I was getting into, it was at that point where now I'm in college at SUNY Old Westbury, and that's when the decision came to devote my artwork at that time to this subject matter. And that became the foundational artwork. So for those 3 or 4 years that I was at college there, everything was about that, and right up to the very end. And then after graduating college, then it became an issue of getting out there and speaking, and then writing the books.
I find this fascinating because you added to the equation that in 1991, when you had your epiphany, and apparently were attending SUNY Old Westbury College.
Yeah.
Literally dead epicenter of the area that I'm studying, that I'm saying is historically manipulating the minds of children.
Okay, yeah.
So like we're crossing lines here now, because I mean, I know you guys are open to the conversation, but that property that school is on has a deep, dark history. All the surrounding areas. We were talking earlier about tunnels that go under things. There's tunnels that go under those properties and everything intersecting around there. To the southeast of the property that you went to school on 106, 107 was the old Brookville Nike missile site.
Okay. Wow.
So your school was actually really a cover location for what was a nuclear missile facility on its fringe property line.
Okay. Wow.
So what was going on under CW Post? Because I went to CW Post.
Hold on a second. I might be getting confused. CW Post and SUNY Westbury, aren't they? They're so darn near close to each other.
They are very close.
Yeah.
Yes, they're extreme. Yeah. So I might be getting the property lines confused. But
I used to love driving through the backside where all those rich neighborhoods where Macy's house was, Macy's Mansion.
Those were those were my customers. I serviced all of those homes surrounding that property. They were ancient, rich properties. They all had tunnels that went under them. The Vanderbilt properties, the Morgans, the Pierponts, everybody had stuff going on. That was the area.
I love that area.
Just on the other side of Jericho Turnpike, you had all of that property that was donated by the church to the mobsters. That was all,
There's no mobsters. What are you talking about?
Mobsters on Long Island.
Nah, never.
Not the ones I worked for. Those were good, honest folks.
Since you're interested in the timeline here, when I was done and wrapping things up with my senior exhibition at Old Westbury, that's when Linda and I met
at his art exhibition at SUNY Old Westbury.
Putting aside,
on his 25th birthday, of his 25th birthday. Notwithstanding
any spaceship experiences, this is when we physically met.
So now that exact moment, that exact moment, you're there, you're doing your exhibition,
right?
And you, what's the literal moment? Paint that picture for me, Richard. You're sitting there. What's the first things you guys said to each other?
Well, see, that's the thing. My mom already knew him.
Yeah.
My mom met him through that book club, that group that they were all with. And she said to me, now, mind you, I'm very pregnant with my now 25-year-old daughter. And she said, I'm going to SUNY Old Westbury to meet Joanne and Janet and a few others from the book club to see this artist, this young kid that just joined the group's artwork. Do you want to go? And I was like, yeah, whatever. It was a winter night. I had nothing to do. I was very pregnant. My two older boys were old enough. They were, 9 and 6.
You probably said, I'll go if you get me something to eat.
I drove there and we pull up, we walk to the building, we open it up, and it's crowded, like insane crowded in this warehousey, Manhattan-y looking building, all open pretty much.
I didn't realize this many people would show up to the opening reception.
I was like, who is this person that we're going to see that it is packed? So my mom sees a group of people and she goes, oh, there's Janet and Joanne. That must be him. there's this beast of a man, really tall. I'm only 5'2", he's 6'2", so he's really tall. We walk up. Go ahead, tell him.
The first time I saw her, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, I know her, but I've never met her. How do I know her? We
instantly knew each other.
That's what I was figuring was going to happen.
And then I was like, I have to know her. I have to get to know her, but I know her already. So all these conflicted.
You knew it. So before you said a word to her, you had already ascertained that.
I couldn't take my eyes off of her.
And then we shook hands, and he said, "Hi, I'm Rick." And honestly, I don't even remember driving home. Like, it's a total blank in my head.
Wow.
Yeah, there was definitely a recognition, an electrical spark there. It's like, and yeah, she was 9 months pregnant, but I'm looking at her like, I have to know this person or get to know her or figure out who she is. There's something going on here. And there was an instant attraction. And the other strange thing about it is that, you know, the other thing that was really setting off my brain, and I was fighting with myself on it, was I looked at her being pregnant, and the first thing I thought was, that's mine. And then I took a few steps back. I was like, idiot, why the hell are you thinking that? You've never met this woman before. How would you be the father to this woman who is 9 months pregnant? You know, so, but that was the first thought, was I know her, I don't know how, and that's mine, in reference to the pregnancy. And it was just, that infamous thought has stuck with me all these years. It just came out of thin air.
Part of the oddity in my life that I would say I've paid attention to forever, but only as of recently have I've done more with it, because I'm studying the remote viewing programs and the sciences around these abnormal conscious skills, right? But regardless, there's apparently a lot of science now that shows that we absolutely can know things without explaining a way of how we knew it.
Yeah.
So we have our standard 5 senses, which is the tools that we normally use to know something. And people will accept we know something if we can explain which one of our 5 senses we used in the knowing. But the CA and the remote viewing program and Bob Monroe and Itzhak Bentov learned that we most certainly can know something without being able to explain why we know it. And it's really true. I've done that my whole life, actually. I've done this as an exercise because I have noticed times throughout my whole life where I actually was right about something. I knew it, but I knew I had no reason to know it. So I just paid attention, and I would track these things and know it is possible to know things without knowing why. And I would always just suggest people also pay attention to it in their life, because I also believe it's a skill set that we can work with and grow.
Yes.
But we need to first pay attention to that we're doing it. I love that you guys have this moment where, Richard, you identified this knowing. I love it. I agree with you. I bet you did know it. You knew her. And thank you for noticing that. And I'm sure there's other times in your life and Linda's where you knew it. You couldn't explain why. But again, no one can take that from you.
No.
Take that from me. They'll argue about it because they can't explain it.
Right.
But it doesn't change the fact that you still knew. And that's what was maddening the government agencies with the remote viewers, because they couldn't prove why they were right. So they would then say, well, since they can't prove it, that means they're wrong because they don't have provable results. Well, that's the way you want to look at it, through the old filter of science, that you have to be able to prove something to be right. You're going to miss out on a lot of good information.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Imagine if you didn't trust yourself, Richard, if you're like, this is crazy. You know, I can't know this is true.
The good thing was he wasn't raised that way. He was raised to believe all of that kind of stuff.
Correct. Yes, to trust yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, my parents were have always been very open to it. My dad still is, you know, and my mother raised us on it. So UFOs in the Bible and all that stuff. So
yeah, you guys have a more open mentality. I have this little thought experiment that I throw out there. I'm going to chuck at you guys, and don't tell me your answers right away, and keep them to yourselves because you might answer differently. Okay, but here's a theoretical, right? It's happening to each of you individually. Okay, you're sleeping. It's 2 a.m. All of a sudden, there's a hammering on your front door. Boom, 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 doorbell, everything. You know, someone's at your front door. You open your front door, and you are presented with yourself. By your definition, you're convinced of it. It's not, it's just, that's the theoretical. You open the door, you look, you see it's you. Your version of you then says, listen, I know this looks really weird. I don't have any time to explain it whatsoever. We'll get to that, but you have to come right now. Do you go? Yes or no?
Yeah. Knowing what I know now and meeting all of these people and my new group of friends online and here in New Mexico, yeah, I would.
I would.
I already knew you both would.
My first question would probably be like, what kind of crazy time loop are we creating here?
Right? Yeah, but regardless, you would go, and that's the way that you guys were raised.
Yeah.
Technically, you trust yourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'd be surprised how many people say, no way. How do I know it's me, Bob? They come up with every excuse in the book not to go.
You don't know it's really you, but
that was the hypothesis. Yeah,
would be knocking on your door in the middle of the night unless it's really something serious going on.
Even if it's bad, even if it's a crappy facsimile of me, I need to go take that thing out.
You gotta find out what's going on.
Mess on my porch. Where are we going, you little lying son of a?
I would probably be thinking in my head, what did you do now, Linda?
That's what I would be thinking. If I would, that'd be really fast where I would go at. I'd like, oh man, I'm in trouble if I had to get my own ass on myself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If I had to get myself out of the bed in the middle of the night in a covert type way, what the hell did I do in the future? Because I know the way I am now, I'm not afraid to take risks. Not adrenaline junkie type jumping out of a plane risk, but like starting a TV channel or just on a whim, let's go move back to Florida and just, I'm not afraid to do that.
You know, I just thought of something because you guys are a couple as a switcheroo on this theoretical. Okay. You wake up, you go to the door, but it's your spouse. So Linda, you go to the door and it's Richard. You know, you just left him in the bed. And vice versa. Do you still go?
Yes.
Okay. How about you, Richard? Linda at the door, you still go with her?
Yes.
Okay. And you just say, we're going to leave the other one upstairs for real?
Because I'd probably be like, oh, man.
What did we get ourselves into this time? Yes.
Right?
With the amount of things that we have gone through in our lifetime together, the experiences, I mean, like I told you the other day, and it's explained in here, there was a battle on a ship that I had to come and rescue him with. I don't want to ruin the story for everybody else, but just to intrigue everybody, I had to come onto that ship with my daughter from the future, who's the same age as I am now, or a little younger, to save him. And we had to change the timeline so that he can still be here now.
Wowzers.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I love the timeline conversations. That to me is that's really the dawn of the new age, and where our consciousnesses are going to be expanding in the future. Is that time is not what we've been presented.
No, absolutely not.
And that's going to be one of the big challenges for people to wrap their heads around, that I think is going to be helpful for folks like us to come in and give them some solace, is that you're not crazy. Time is not what you've been told. It is way less linear. It is very easy to screw with, so to say, because it's perspective.
Yeah,
life has always been perspective, and time is a perspective in that. It's part of a grander construct or matrix, whatever you want to call it. It's a variable like temperature, and temperature can be adjusted.
Yes.
It's that simple. It's going to be hard for people to deal with it. They understand right now they have a thermostat in their house and they can adjust the temperature. They're going to learn soon that there's going to be a technology that they can use and it's going to adjust their time.
Yeah.
Yes, but they also have to learn to be very careful with what they adjust.
Everything. Yeah. It could get too hot. It could get too cold. You know, you turn the dial in the wrong way, things get ugly.
Yes.
Systems can break as well. But regardless, temperature is real, and so is its adjustment. Time has a reality to it, and so does its manipulation.
Yes.
It still comes with great responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility, regardless.
Responsibility.
But the sad thing is by squandering the power in the hands of a few, I would say, is already mismanagement of the power, and releasing it to the masses technically is the more appropriate thing, similar to having a legitimate free market capitalist society or one that's a sham that has an overseer with a taxation department and things like that. You know, so
but
moving forwards in time, but not at the behest of the many who should be in control of their futures and destinies versus the intents of a few handlers that understand the dials that can be manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I just worry that the masses, once they realize they can control that dial without truly understanding the repercussions if they go the wrong way, what in the hell?
Oh, you're right. Those that's coming, but those are just inevitable growing pains.
Yes.
I would make it analogous to, like, let's say black powder weapons didn't exist in the hands of the masses to begin with. It's inevitable. And people might have said way back when, well, we can't just start giving firearms out to everybody. Well, there's going to be people shooting everybody all over the place. Well, yeah, that will happen. But the existing position of just the people in authority having the weapons, I don't think that's acceptable either. So they're going to have to distribute the tech to everybody at some point. There's going to be growing pains every time you get a new technology going out through the masses until everybody learns how to function responsibly, you know.
Maybe
there's all kinds of crazy things that happen when new techs come out with understanding. I heard a great story that when cars first came out, there's this story about a guy and his brother going out for a Friday night, taking out the family car back in the day, and they're heading out on the town, and the mom yells out the kitchen window, "Don't be driving the car around all night with no gas in it. You'll ruin the engine." But that shows how when a new technology comes out, we don't know anything. We can't expect to use it correctly.
Yeah. No, you'll just stop and walk home. That's all.
Yeah. But the mom, she can't even get that yet. A car, this newfangled thing, is so over her head.
I would say, the growing pains are happening on many levels. As way back in the 90s, it was discovered by the scientific community that they had found, you would think with the expanding universe, always expanding outward, that the outer sections of it would be younger and the central sections would be older. That's just logical. But as they looked out further, they started finding pockets of the universe on the outer realms of the universe that were much older than the central part of the universe. And they're like, well, how do we explain that? Well, the idea is that, when things are getting old enough, like our universe, the walls or the barriers of the time-space continuum are going to start to break down and allow another universe to merge with it. That's a scary thought. The average human being might not like that idea because it's very overpowering to think, well, two universes merging with each other, what happens? But that seems to be the case, where an older, more ancient universe is now merging with ours on the outer rim in areas where it's supposed to be younger, not older. So the theory still stands. Yes, the outer rims are younger, but these older sections are coming from another universe merging with ours.
They could be interconnecting. We would have no idea technically from our perspective. This is a conversation that I had with the scientist at the South Pole regularly.
Okay.
It's funny because what you're discussing is our observable universe. This goes into the knowing and the unknowing.
Mm-hmm.
The big mistake with all of our science is they're discussing what we know, what we can measure, what we have devices for, which are simply an extension of our five senses. When we take a measuring tool, we're just taking our five senses and pushing them out further. Currently, the state of human science has us where we are at the epicenter of what they call, a 4.5 billion year old bubble of observation.
Mm-hmm.
Inside that bubble is effectively the distance that light can travel and then come back to us.
Right.
We can observe that inside that bubble is what our science is discussing. So like when you say on the perimeter versus the middle, that's that bubble.
Yeah.
The problem with that bubble is that's not reality. That's just what we can observe. So we don't know that our universe might be 1,000,000 times bigger than that bubble. So our time calculations would be wrong. Everything would be wrong. This is what this guy was telling me, is that basically what we know is everything we know is wrong because our calculations are based off of this time, which doesn't allow for anything outside of that bubble, simply off the basis we can't ascertain it. It doesn't mean that it's not there. It just means we can't add it into the calculation, which means there's a potential reality, a highly probable reality that we're not calculating for. So our universe isn't really 4.5 billion years old. It's just 4.5 billion years that we can observe. It could be 10 trillion years old. So if we're going to reverse engineer to try to find the epicenter of the Big Bang, you actually have to know the actual perimeter, which we never will. So the Big Bang thing is a sham.
Yeah.
So they can get investment money because they have to do things linear. They have to take the next step of the budget has to come from the previous one or they can't take it. It's just simple. It doesn't actually mean anything they say is ever right. I used to sit in these seminars all the time and it blew my mind because I could drive trucks through the holes in the logic of their story, but I would respectfully sit down, wait for the thing to end, and I would talk to the scientist afterwards and say, but that's not true, and that's not true, and that can't be. And then he'd sit there and he'd draw pictures for me and go, well, you're right, and we're wrong because of this, and we know this part, and so on and so forth. And I'd say, but then why do you teach it like this? Why don't you tell people we're wrong and we don't know? He goes, because they want to know stuff. He goes, everything we know is wrong, and tomorrow we'll learn new stuff and tell them new things. But everything we have in the books right now, we already know is wrong. Based off of certain premises in science, like that bubble, and the fact that we know that the speed of light actually can change.
Yes.
All of our science is based off of the speed of light being a constant. It's just currently at that rate. It's not a constant. It's just a setting. We're at that setting. It's like saying that you go to a radio tuner and you say, oh, it's at 100.3. It's a constant. No, that's just where it's at. Change it. So science also knows that there are going to be variables that will impact the speed of light, and that it has been different in the past, and it will absolutely be different again in the future.
And it's mind-blowing to think how much of that outer rim hasn't been touched by the speed of light yet. So
it's just that we haven't been able to exchange with that information at that distance or beyond it, so to say. It's just a bubble of information that we can't get to.
Well, somebody better pop that bubble real soon.
It just takes more technology, more information, more direction and stuff like that. It's getting outside of the boundaries of the limits of the minds that are telling us contemporarily what the limits are. We need to break those limits all day long.
From your perspective, what do you think the mass reaction will be to conscious contact in the very near future? Because I know it's going to happen very soon.
Extraterrestrial conscious? Okay, yeah.
Something? In my mind's eye, when you just asked me right now, my mind's eye thought of it as almost liberating.
Yes.
And the reason was I think of it as liberating from the incessant toils of laboring for resources when we should be able to have things happen much easier. I'm a big fan of folks like Buckminster Fuller and the idea that the purposes of industrialization and mechanization, as far as I'm concerned, is to give us easier lives.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a reason we should be working 60, 80, 100 hours a week to pay a mortgage. To whose benefit is that? I think as human beings, we're supposed to be enjoying life and consciousness and expanding ourselves and moving outwardly and increasing our boundaries and horizons. But I think currently we have forces that like to apply more boundaries and keep us focused on things.
We're the only species on this planet that works to live.
Right. Yes. That's a manipulation. I don't understand why all day long I can't just sit and engage with folks like you mentally for the benefit of humanity.
Your electric, your water, your rent, etc. We shouldn't have to worry about all those things.
Right. What's like, in a way, I've said this before to people, like, freedom, right? So freedom in a way is choice. Like you could follow that analogy, right? Your freedom is your limit of your choices. Okay. So if I said to Richard and Linda, tomorrow morning, I want you to move forwards in your life just being free, meaning doing everything you want to do by your choice. Now, following that freedom, okay, this analogy, how far do you think you can go into the future being free before you'd have to get back to those obligations that you'd be shirking?
Yeah.
Right? Like if tomorrow morning you're like, screw it, Linda, we're going to shirk and we're going to be free and we're going to be free for as long as we can. How long would it be till your freedom ran out?
Well, if he said it, probably a few hours, because he would never say that. He's not the risk taker I am.
Fair enough.
I would probably find a way to find food on our own, find shelter on our own. I mean, we can just go so far without money to put gas in the car. So,
yeah, you get your limits of your freedoms get shoved in your face really fast in this world.
Because you need money to do anything the way we currently live.
There's a system that makes sure you integrate.
Huh?
And there's a system that makes sure that you integrate for it.
Of course. But if we were to completely go off grid and not rely on any of that we need money for.
It reminds me of the movie Trading Places with Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy. That's a good scenario right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
I could probably go longer than Richard because I've had everything taken away from me once before. So I've had to learn to live with whatever I could, whatever I could get my hands on.
But isn't it funny too that how our brains, even in just this theoretical, that our brains are going to, if you're going to be free, you have to be without.
Yes.
Yeah.
That even too, we're set up to think that way. That why can't you have freedom and abundance? Because certainly the people that would suggest that they're the most free would be the ones that seem to have the most abundance as well, and they would suggest that that's the desirable position.
That's how it should be. And I'm sure that
right. So it's funny how the ones that get themselves in that position create a racket to prevent the rest from getting there. And this is what I call musical chairs of life and the big scam.
Yes.
Actually, where if you try hard enough, you get to the top. That's like musical chairs. It's a lie. The American dream's a lie. It's musical chairs. Everyone's trying the same, but it's set up that not everyone, there's not a spot for everyone at the top. Not every kid can win at musical chairs. I assure you they're all trying.
I know. And we shouldn't have to hurt our fellow man to do so.
Correct. I think there's a different way that we can do this, that we can everybody can have. We don't need to have nots. There's no lack of resources on this planet. That's just a bold-faced lie. There's plenty for everyone. It's just mismanaged. That's all. But
yeah,
I think folks like you and I are going to get a voice out there and hopefully change things.
Definitely.
I hope so.
No, I know it's psychology has a lot to do with it too, because there were two main things that affected the way I think about that whole scenario of freedom versus choice versus resources limiting you to those choices. And that's seeing at a very early age what my mom had to do for my brother and I, Okay. And as we were growing up, and the other would be when I was still in the New York area, I worked in Manhattan at the New York Post for 5 years straight, and I worked the graveyard shift. Okay. So you see a whole different crowd after 11 p.m. It's a whole different breed of human, if you can still call them human, and a whole different environment that you're walking into.
Yep.
And what I saw on the streets of Manhattan in that 13 block walk I had to do all the time from Penn Station up to Midtown, okay, is it just left an indelible mark on my mind that I'm no better than these people, and I'm one paycheck away from what these homeless people are going through right now and all the horrors I saw them going through. And then you get to realize there's working that long and coming in contact with homeless people on a regular basis like that, you get to see the three mental phases that they sink into, you know.
That just means that the system that created this monetary system works in brainwashing people.
I know. And there was that first level of homelessness. Mm-hmm. And this was the person who knew how to talk his way through and give you a bunch of BS as to why, you know, he needed a few bucks for this or that. And I'd be like, okay, if you want breakfast, I'll go buy it for you. I'm going to get an egg sandwich before I catch my train. Let's go get it. And, you know, there was those kind of people. Sometimes they wanted it. Sometimes it was a line of BS because they just wanted to get some hard liquor somewhere and get drunk. Then there was the second level where they've been homeless for so long, they're sinking to that level now where they're having conversations through you to some imaginary person that's standing behind you. They're talking right at you, but they're not talking to you. They're talking to somebody else who's not there, standing right next to you. Okay.
No, they're not there.
That's what I mean. And then
they could be there.
That, you know, somebody was there. They were having a good conversation, and I walked into that a couple of times where I thought they were talking to me, and I'm like, I'm turning around looking like, who the hell else is here with me? So, and then there's the third and final realm that they sink into permanently, and that's when they've been homeless for so long, they are completely psychologically gone.
They don't even see the other people on the street around them anymore.
Yeah, they don't see anything. You walk by them, you wave, their eyes are open, but they don't see you. They're just out of it, gone. And that was such a scary thing to see those three levels in succession happen. Mm-hmm. And that leaves a very bad mark on you. And then, of course, there's the idea of, where do these homeless people get their health insurance from? Because there was one homeless person I saw walking back to Penn Station late one night at 2 o'clock in the morning, where he was out there. And I swear to God, I just, to this day, it gives me chills down my spine. He had some kind of a disease on his leg. He had his leg exposed as he's sitting on the sidewalk with his cardboard box in his own shopping cart and section. His foot was exposed. That wasn't the worst part of it. The worst part of it was that the skin had decayed so much on the toes of his foot that the bones were exposed. I saw the bones of his toes sticking out from his foot. There were no toes there anymore. And these are the kind of things you start to see. And it's just kind of like, wow, this is what I'm one paycheck away from. Holy shit, you know. So
okay,
yeah.
But I mean,
about the system.
Yeah.
I think of folks like that you're seeing, folks like you, folks like us. We're cogs in a machine, more or less.
Yeah.
And I have way less control over where my cog is placed in the machine, and you have very little control over where your cog is placed in the machine. Until such time we all work together and realize there's a big machine thing going on to discuss.
Right.
You know?
There's that infamous dialogue in one of the Matrix movies between the Elder and Neo, and they're down below where the machines are. And there was this whole philosophical discussion they were having. They're like, we need these machines to live, but they need us to keep them running. Right. And like that tug of war there, but exactly. You know, and it was in the context of machines who were trying to wipe out the human race, and here we need machines to live. So
yes. And maybe at some point we're gonna find some sort of a harmony. Is that day tomorrow? Did we pass it? I mean, I don't have all of the answers, but I feel like you folks that we're just, we're asking different questions. We're outside of the norm. We're on the fringe, and someone needs to ask these questions. It's, like the Far Side comics, so to say, like, where the cows are stepping up and asking, I don't know if the farmer has our best interests at mind anymore, type stuff. That's just the way I look at it. It's like, these are fair questions. And it amazes me how fast society like plays like whack-a-mole to people like us that pop our heads up and ask these questions. And that to me is just more signs of the machine. Like, what are you getting so mad at me just for saying, I think we've been lied to?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There was one of the famous political cartoonists. His last name is Crumb. I can't remember his first name. Art Crumb or Arthur Crumb, possibly. I'm not remembering the first name, but the last name is definitely Crumb. And he did this political cartoon one time about the three choices we're heading into with our society. And one depiction was of the super high tech, Star Trek future cityscapes and all of that, very advanced.
Robert Crumb.
Robert Crumb, that's it, yes. And then the second depiction was a complete Holocaust wasteland, devastation, just society is just dead, okay? And then the third one is somewhere in between where we're living with nature. It's almost like technology was still there, but here we are living in trees or tree houses that are sophisticated. There was that third option too. So it was interesting, the three options he presented in that political cartoon.
I'm looking for it. I don't see it.
And it's, I forget what newspaper it showed up in, but it was quite interesting, and it was done in color.
Oh.
And you get out of here. No. And that's very telling about the doorstep that we're at, this critical mass, this fork in the road that we're at right now. Which way are we going to go?
Yep.
Well, like he said, once the cogs realize that we're running the machine.
Exactly.
Yeah, we can come to a grinding halt.
Yes, we can.
That's the way I look at it, is that we just have to let everybody know. And, I don't want to get all super duper political at all, but it's more underdoggy conversation. Was it Denmark, I think, where they just did that whole pots and pans protest?
I don't know. We don't have regular TV, so we don't watch the news.
No problem at all. I'm gonna guess. I believe it was Denmark. And in this country, they were very upset with all the overseer type regulations going on that we're seeing in these other countries because of all the shenanigans as of late. This country, what they simply did was what they called the pots and pans protest. The whole country just stopped working. And so the politicians did what they wanted. That's the cogs taking over the machine. That's all we ever have to do, folks. It is that simple. On any given day, we just say no. It's the most powerful word in our language. It's the most empowering position you can ever have. And it's the easiest one to do, because all you have to do is nothing. That's the position.
That was
you have to do this. Just say no
and
smile. And you can do that all day and realize that no one can make you do it, and no one can make us all do it. And we simply have to work together, be good cogs, break the machine, just say no.
Exactly.
Yeah. That was Gandhi's whole point with his protest.
Oh,
okay. Go ahead. Sorry about that. Okay. Somebody's at the door.
We are actually getting to the tail end of our 2 hours, so I don't want to hold you guys up.
Oh, okay.
Time does fly fast on these things. I know it always goes quick, and there's always a million things to talk about technically.
Exactly.
Right.
This has been a fantastic conversation.
I love this conversation.
A lot of fun. And we didn't even get into all the tons of Long Island stuff yet. That's why I love that. This is like it's just the beginning. It's the tip of the iceberg. It's so amazing to me. I loved hearing the story of UFOs flying around in Farmingdale.
Yes.
They're all over Long Island. I mean, I have years filled in that book of every single night my mother wrote down how many she saw flying over our house, because we lived on the waterfront.
Yep.
So, and she swore there was some kind of underwater base in the Atlantic.
Out at Montauk. Yep, right at Montauk. There was known underwater submarine access for submarine pens, and the idea was that Long Island, being a glacial moraine, a sedimentary deposit from the glaciers of old, Long Island is actually a ridge of bedrock. Just barely sticks up before the sea level, and then the rest of the sediment is on top of there. And a lot of folks say that you can get into that bedrock and then get really deep technically, and then actually out and under the seabed.
Okay. Wow.
Yep.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it's a very peculiar geological setup, but it's definitely worthy of more conversation and studies, and I'm really looking forward to everything that's going on, guys. So I want to thank you for coming on. I'm sorry I didn't know that you were not on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network anymore, but everybody go to Roku. Check out Fringe TV. You can follow me at Deciphering My Experience on YouTube and MeWe, and soon to be Roku as well on Fringe TV. So we'll all be working to make better things happen in the future. And I'll throw my cog into your machine, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so very much.
Guys. Well, thank you very much. I'm gonna stop the video recording here, and there we go. All right, everybody have a great day. Thank you for coming, and see you next time on Deciphering My Experience.